Hello, my name is Wade Haney. I'm the Director of Technology for Anderson County Schools, and today we're going to look at the Skyward Gradebook for elementary, middle, and high school grades. We will start with launching a Google Chrome browser and going to the Anderson County website. That is www.acs.ac. On the main county website, you will see a Skyward link, which we will launch, and you will log in with your email ACS credentials, which I'm going to do as myself right now. Once you're logged in, you will see your main Skyward login screen. Today I'm logged in as a teacher from Norwood Elementary, and the gradebook we're going to look at to initially begin is the Elementary Standards-Based Gradebook. When you're logged into Skyward, you will see a tab that says Teacher Access. Go to Teacher Access tab and go to My Gradebook. From there, if you are an elementary teacher, you will see the subjects that you teach that are pre-populated, as well as every student that is enrolled in those classes. In this case, we're going to begin with the Standards Gradebook, which will be the first grade self-contained. It will also say Standards Gradebook as the link, which I will click. I am now logged in as a first grade standards-based gradebook for the first grade level, and you will see that all of the standards are pre-populated. One of the major problems that we have seen with teachers when they use the Standards Gradebook is making sure that they record grades in the appropriate and proper grading term. I'm going to go to Display Options and go down to Grade Period Display to try to help you out with that. Once we go to Display Options, you will see all of the grading periods for the entire year listed. In this case, I'm going to select Quarter 1, which is the beginning of the year only. Many times, all of the quarters are selected, and the grades can get crossed between Quarter 1 and Quarter 2, depending on when the grade is actually recorded. So make sure that we choose Quarter 1 as the beginning of the year and click Save. This will help significantly in making sure that you record grades only in the appropriate and proper grading term that you happen to start out in. Now you're also going to see I have the students listed for this teacher on the left-hand side of the screen. If I go back to Display Options, I can go to Student Display and I can change how the students' names are viewed. Right now they are listed by first name, last name, and it is called short name, and it's separated by a comma. Normally I would suggest using the first name, last name as a full name. That way you can get to know your students. You know the full first, middle, and last name of your students. But in this case today, I'm going to suppress those names for training purposes. So I'm going to choose Suppress and click Save. In real life, you would choose the one that best fits your needs, and you would click Save as well. Now, once I've done that, you're going to see that the names are suppressed on the left-hand side of the screen. In your case, you would see the names listed as you have chosen from the display options. The great thing with the display options is you can change those on the fly. They can be changed at any given time. Now, we will see that we have our students listed on the left. We have our pre-populated standards across the screen. And as I scroll across the screen, we will see all the standards that are listed for Quarter 1 for the entire first 9 weeks grading period. As students progress through the 9 weeks, you will be marking these grades for your students. Now, in the standards-based grading system, you basically select the header for the standard that applies to your students, and then you can mass give a grade. In this case, the grade is 1 through 4, and I'm going to mass assign every student a 4. And then I would only change those students that did not have a 4 in this actual standard. At this time, I could go through and change those students that did not have a 4 and then click Save. In this case, for training purposes, I will click Undo because this is a live and true actual class. And go back. So if I would have saved that, the listing would be for every student to have a grade as you're progressing throughout the year. Now you're going to notice that inside of this standards-based gradebook, there is also an attendance area. For our standards-based gradebook and elementary teachers, you will take attendance from this gradebook, and you will take daily attendance. In our case, this is not an actual school day, so I cannot mark these radio buttons, But during a normal school day, you will go through the radio buttons and every kid will be automatically marked present, and you will simply choose absent or tardy for those students that happen to be absent or tardy for that day. At that point in time, you would click Save, which will be a button beside of the back button. Again, Save is not here because it's not an actual school day, and you would save the attendance for your students for that day. Now, as I said earlier, the biggest issue we've seen with standards-based gradebooks is marking these in the appropriate term. Normally with standards-based gradebooks, you only mark these at the end of the quarters, at the end of quarter one, at the end of quarter two, and so on. So normally this is happening when there is a split of quarter two opening, quarter one ending. And so always again go through that display options, make sure that you are only displaying the grading period in which you wish to mark. If you happen to mark the incorrect grading period, say you mark quarter two with all of quarter one's grades, you will then have to go back and manually change those, which is very time consuming. This will save you a significant amount of time if you will make sure that you're in the appropriate grading term. Now let's go and look at the standards-based gradebook. The standards gradebook is actually based on all grades, grades 1 through 12. The standards-based gradebook is based on a numeric grade which the kids will earn. In this case, I'm going to go to a science class, which happens to be first grade science, and I click on the science tab. Now you will notice that this is not pre-populated. The reason being is you will record the assignments that you, the teacher, give to your students. Now, as we started out with looking at the display options with the standards gradebook, I'm going to do the same with the secondary gradebook. If I go to the display options, there is the grade period display. And you will notice that it is listing and displaying the entire grading periods for the whole year. This can be very cumbersome in how you view your grades. So I would suggest just to go and say hide all and then only select the actual term that you're going to be in. For the beginning of the year, you should only select midterm 1 and quarter 1. Now Skyward will also, when quarter 2, midterm 2 rolls around, it will automatically turn those grading periods on for you. So after the beginning of the year, you should really never need to change this again because Skyward will turn those on as the grading periods open up. So if I click Save, you're going to now see that it only shows me the midterm 1 and the quarter 1. Now let's talk about the midterm grading period versus quarter 1. The midterm grading period is simply a snapshot in time, which is usually taken about 4.5 weeks into the semester. At that time, any grade that is recorded in Skyward will show up as a running average for midterm 1. Once the midterm is actually passed, that midterm 1 grade will stay the same, but of course the quarter 1 will continue to be a running average until the quarter 1 is ended. The actual grading periods that we work with in Skyward are quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. Those are the official grading terms in which the children's GPA is actually populated from. So in quarter 1, let's look at how we will give grades and actually how we will record assignments. At the very top of the tab area, there is a listing for categories, and we're going to go there and set up on how we're going to grade for this class. Now, if you look in the upper left corner, it says the grades are currently based on total points. You have two major grading systems that Skyward will allow you to use. The first being total points and the second being weighted categories. We're going to look at both of those and I will show you how to change these. In total points, it's a real simple average of all the points possible at the end of the 9 weeks, and it will take those total points and it will average those across the board. Total points are used in elementary, middle, and high as well. Many people use total points. There is nothing wrong with this grading system, but just know that if every assignment is a 100, especially it seems to be at the elementary level, most teachers use everything based out of a 100, that a test can count the same as a regular daily assignment. Now with total points, you can use categories for reference purposes and for organizational purposes. In this case, you're going to see that there are many categories that are used, and every category has a very specific color assigned to it. This again is only for organizational purposes and to be able to see what assignments you're given by a color-coded diagram. Now if we choose to change our grading system, which I'm going to choose to do that right now, I go to my upper right of my screen and I choose Change Scoring Method. Now, I want you to also notice that changing the scoring method can only happen before an assignment is given. Once an assignment is given and you record grades for that assignment, you are locked in to the grading system and the grading type in which you've already chosen. So please make sure you change this before you give assignments, before you do grades, and just know that again, once you pick a grading system or a grading scale, you will need to stay with that through the end of that 9 weeks period. Now, in this section, it says use total points to calculate grades. That is currently what I'm set at. I'm going to use the second option, which is base grades on percents assigned to categories. And I'm going to click Save. At this point, it gives me all the categories that I can pick and choose from, and now I've got to decide how I want to set my class up. In this case, I'm going to go and say Add and Edit Categories. This will allow me to choose which categories are used. If the category is going to be used in this class, it will have a blue check mark beside of it. And then you will need to give weight to that particular category. I'm going to go out and say Daily Assignment. I'm going to use it. I'm going to give it, say, 40%. I'm going to use Homework. I'm going to say it's worth 20. Let's go and use, if you'll notice, I'm unchecking categories I'm unusing. And so I'm going to use Quizzes as 20. And then if I do Tests as 20, you should now see that in the upper right corner, it has averaged or has added those together for me and told me that I'm at 100%. Now, if I don't get to 100%, it will not let me go further. You will need to make sure that all of your categories add up to 100%. In this case, it is. And in my unused categories, I'm just simply going to uncheck those. And only the categories that have weight are actually going to be used. And I'm going to click Save. So now I see I have categories assigned, I have weight in these categories, and now I'm ready to actually give an assignment and score that assignment. So at this point, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to the Assignments tab and choose Add an Assignment. Now, Skyward will default the assignment to the current date that you're putting the assignment in as. Today is Friday. Actually, it's not Friday. It says it's July 31st. It's doing that because it's saying it's not a school day. It's going to the most current date possible in Skyward to when this actual current year would begin. But what Skyward will do when you're in a normal school year is it will default to the current date in which you're in, and it will allow you to make your assignments on that date. Now, the only time this really matters is when you get to the end of the 9 weeks period. After the 9 weeks ends, you, the teacher, will have usually 3 to 5 days, sometimes even up to a week and a half if it's near fall break, in order to get your grades in. At that point, when you enter in assignments, you will need to make sure that the assignment date falls within the actual grading period in which you wish it to happen. For instance, if it is at the end of quarter 1 and you need to make sure that the grading date on the assignment falls within the quarter 1 window. You will always receive an email from the Office of Technology telling you when the window for grades and assignments will be. But in this case, again, it is the summer, so it's defaulting to a different date. But in this case, I'm going to pick which category this assignment is going in under, and this is going to be, say, a homework assignment. Of course, the homework is 20% of the overall grade. And now I have the options over on the right, whether to save and go back or to save it and score it right now. Normally when you give an assignment, you're not ready to score it, so I'm going to pretend that's the case. So I'm going to just say save and go back. And it tells me, I need to give it a name. The description, so we're going to call this homework number 1. So it'll be the first homework assignment. And then also I can put a detailed description in there if I choose. You'll also notice one thing I did fail to tell you. It left, and by default, the max score is 100. And then there is a thing called a weight multiplier. And what this is used for is in total points. If you wanted an assignment to count, say, twice, then you could make the weight multiplier 2 here. If you wanted to count 3 times, you could make the weight multiplier become 3 and so on. But by default, it is set to 1 and the max score is 100. So I want to say save and go back. And you're going to see it. My homework assignment now is listed under each student. And we'll also see that it is an asterisk or a star for their grade. What Skyward does in the gradebook is if you see an asterisk or a star, that is considered a null grade. What that means is that this particular grade or assignment does not count for nor against a student. And so let's talk about this for just a second. With a star, if you have a student who is absent and has not completed an assignment, say every student in the class has completed the assignment and you're getting ready to record grades, but a couple of students were not there or have not completed the assignment, if you leave that assignment as a star, it does not count against the student. And what can happen is as time goes along and you get towards the end of the 9 weeks, if you don't go back and fix that at some point in time, those missing assignments do not count against the student. Now, if you go back at the end of the 9 weeks and you start changing stars to zeros, a student's grade can fall significantly and very fast. And so you'll have parents calling wanting to know how a student's grade has fallen so fast. So what we recommend is if your students have not completed the assignment, to make that star a 0. The reason being is if they don't complete the assignment, the 0 is already in there. We know what it's going to count for on the actual grade. And as well as the student that makes the work up, if they make the assignment up, the 0 goes to an actual grade, and of course their running average goes up. So again, make sure you mark those as zeros for assignments that are not turned in. Now there's a couple of ways to actually mark the grades for this. You can simply click beside each student's name. It will bring the grading system up, and then I can simply go down the page and start recording grades. And as I enter the grade in, I just press the enter key on the keyboard and it takes me to the next student. Now there are a couple of options you can use here which are really nice so that parents can know what's going on in your classroom. When parents log into Parent Access in Skyward, there is a little banner that will flash up that tells that parent if their student or their child has missing assignments. And the reason and how that will pop up is you will go over here and you will say this is a missing grade. And then in this case, I would say the student's not done it, and so it is a 0 and it will get recorded that way. So this child's parent, when they log into Parent Access, will see that this child is missing an assignment, and hopefully that will be a way to get that parent to get the child to make that work up. Now, if you don't mark it as missing, it could still mark it as a 0. It's just the parent will not get that indicator that this assignment is missing. You can also put a comment out here, and you can say, hey, if this child was absent, you could put a comment that says, waiting on makeup work to be completed, or whatever comment you choose to pick for this particular child. So at this case, I'm not going to finish filling the rest of these out, but I would click save. And then we will see students receiving their running average on the left, and it would say for quarter 1, this first student has a 78 average, and of course as they earn more grades and more assignments, then this running average will change. You'll also notice that this 0 is bold. It is bold because I marked it as missing. A bold 0 tells me that I have indicated to the parent that this is a missing assignment. So it also gives you an indicator in the gradebook that you have marked it as such. Now, if I want to go back and make an additional assignment, I simply go and say add assignment. In this case, I could choose a different category. I would give it a description. And we would say this is it's actually the speaking category. You might call it a class project, or again, you can name it anything you want to name it. And in this case, let's say I have already graded this. I could say save and score. And immediately I'm in the scoring method for this particular class. Now there are also some nice things that you can do for mass assigning grades. If I wanted to say mass assign each kid a 100 for this, I could say assign all scores to a 100. And I can say apply. And real quickly, every kid gets 100. Let's say this one student was not here. I could say this is a 0 and it is a missing assignment. simply much faster than recording 100 for every student in the list. And at that point in time, I'm going to choose Save. And you're going to see that I have a couple of assignments, 2 different categories listed here, and you can see the scoring method is changing. The running average is changing based on the assignments that are put in. Now, since this is a real class and real assignments, I do need to delete these, and occasionally you will need to delete an assignment as well. I simply choose the header or the listing for the assignment, and then on the right there is an option to delete it, and I'll choose OK, and I will delete the second one as well. Now that I'm back to a blank gradebook, I can change the scoring method, and I'm going to do that just to show you how that's done one more time. I'm going to go to Categories, and I'm going to change the scoring method in the upper right corner. I'm going to choose Use Total Points and Save. Now you're going to notice that the categories that I chose earlier are still there. There are just no points values assigned to those categories. In this case, I am going to add some additional categories that I might want to use, and I might want to call exams and folders, and let's see here, papers and presentations, and click Save. And again, for organizational purposes, I do have categories assigned, but there's no weight associated with these. Now if I choose to go back and make an assignment, you're going to notice that I have all the categories that I've picked, but there are no weights beside of them because it simply does not matter which category it goes in, because this is simply for organizational purposes only. So if I say it's a daily assignment, and I'm going to call this assignment number 1, the same would apply, max score 100, weight multiplier of 1, and I'm going to say Save and back. You will see this listed. Now let's talk about the multiplier if you are using total points. If I go back to assignments, add an assignment, and let's say this is an exam. In this case, it might be test number 1, but instead of them being worth a single multiplier of 1, it might actually be worth 3. And I'll say Save and go back. Now what you're going to notice is because it has a weight multiplier of 3, it shows the maximum value of this being worth 300. However, when you record the grade for the students, and I want to go out and let's say I want to score this, then I can simply give it a score out of 100. So let's say this is an 88 and a 90, and let's say a 50. Once I save this, you will notice that it automatically changes that into the multiplier of 3 for me. So I recorded it as an assignment out of 100, but with the weight multiplier of 3, it has automatically changed those scores for me. Again, the asterisk or the stars here is a null grade. And again, if you put assignments in ahead of time, leave them as an asterisk until you actually record the assignment. So, beginnings of gradebook. As you build your gradebook, you will notice that your gradebook will go from left to right. Your assignments, the newest assignments will be on the far left. The oldest assignments will be all the way to the right. As you go through 9 weeks, the assignment listing will get larger and larger, and then you will have a scroll bar at the bottom that will take you and allow you to see the full 9 weeks worth of grades. As your display options change on the student, see the grade period display. If we're in term 2 or we're in term 3, you can actually go out and turn term 1 and 2 off. And the reason being is it keeps your gradebook from being so large. There's nothing wrong with leaving quarter 1 and quarter 2 on if you're in quarter 3. However, the gradebook as you scroll to the right will seem like it just goes on and on because you have so many grades. So again, you could turn those off if you so chose to. But again, that is completely up to you. Now again, I am in a live gradebook, so I need to delete these assignments out because they are real right now. And lastly, taking attendance inside of a secondary gradebook is the same as the standards-based gradebook. If I go to attendance and take daily attendance by name, I will see my students. By default, they will be present and listed here, and then I would mark them absent as we go along. Now, if you are in middle school or high school, this is the exact same process for you. However, as you get towards the end of the day, if a student was marked absent in period 1 and period 2, if it's now period 3 or 4 in the day, most likely if the front office has marked that student as absent for the day, then that student will automatically be marked absent in your grade book. What you will find is if that student walks into your class, you will not have the ability to mark them as present. You'll actually need to go to the front office and get that grading or that attendance changed for that period. So again, as the day goes on along, the absences will automatically start to populate for you if you are in middle school or high school. Elementary, you technically take attendance once a day, and that will not be the case for you. But middle and high, those will start to show up. So again, you would mark the kids present or tardy or absent based on the period you're in, and then you would click the Save button, which would be beside the back button that we see. Now, as we go through here and look, you will notice that we've covered the display options. There are lots of different display options that you as a teacher can pick and choose, but for the general purposes, that is it that you will normally need to deal with. And then your grade categories, again, make sure categories are updated and changed only at the beginning of the school year or the beginning of the semester, before grades are listed and before assignments are given. Again, attendance is taken by the individual class itself. And as we go through here, I will also talk about, lastly, going back and making sure that we have the student display given, and I will put this back for the teacher so that they can see the full name and click Save, and the teacher can again see their students in a list. Thank you. I appreciate your attention.